Hailing from a Chinese family, born in Vietnam, grew up in Houston, Texas, and has lived in the UK for the last 22 years, it's pretty fair to say that Chieu Cao has a worldly view on life and business. Chieu Cao is a seasoned entrepreneur who talks candidly about growing businesses, going global, and the evolution of online consumer behavior in a period of continuous technological innovation. We break down his journey of growing Perkbox and his more recent venture. We cover his thoughts on lots of topics like financial education in schools, the impact of Chat GPT and AI at large. We also delve into what really makes an organization thrive and get through difficult and challenging periods. And we also cover what Chieu is excited by, and he makes some really good points around innovation essentially being restricted by the limitations of the human brain. I've never really thought of it like that and saw innovation as only really being restricted by people's time and ability to interact with the technology or innovation. I thought this was a really interesting spin on things. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. This is a thought-provoking, informative and entertaining take on the journey of an entrepreneur. Lots of crystal ball stuff and so much more. Really does have it all. It's Chieu Cao. Chieu, thank you so much for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast. How are you in sunny Ealing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Gareth, for having me. It's not so cold today, so it's good. It's okay.
As ever, let's get going with the regular opening question that I ask people like yourself, guests who come on the show. What does good leadership mean to you, Chieu?
Yeah, I do spend a lot of time thinking about leadership. Leadership for me has always been really important and a key part of my career, and the highs and lows of my careers can be marked by whether it was a result of good or bad leadership. For me, it really boils down to communication. Good leaders have different ways and effective ways of communicating. They also recognize when there's a breakdown in communication, right? And what does that mean? That means, talking and listening in equal quantities. Listen first and then make your statements versus the other way around. Where you come in and, tell me exactly what you think, what you want to have. And then you turn around and say, what do you think? You're not going to get the same response. So in summary, good leadership is about great communication. It can be written. It can be all sorts of ways. Just interact with your teams in a way that inspires them, but also on a sort of the positive side, but also with dispute resolution. When there are problems, how do you talk about the tough times? How do you kind of overcome challenges, disagreements? How you come out of that is for me just understanding how you communicate. Your style of communication is your style of leadership.
Yeah, for sure. And I think communicating clearly in times of adversity. Do you know, like when you're running out of money and you got to get investment in, or sales haven't gone as well as you thought, and you need to lay people off or whatever. But I think communicating under those circumstances is really challenging, isn't it? How have you become a better communicator, Chieu?
You have to try quite a lot, and you make mistakes. I think you just have to be resilient. You have to be very mindful of your actions and what you say. That's one way.
Yeah.
Another way is to have a sounding board, someone perhaps outside of the company that you can talk to.
Yeah,
it's really important. It gets really lonely at the top for a lot of leaders. They'll tell you that quite often. I've said this, I've done this, no idea whether it's good or bad. Haven't done it before. You need someone out there to kind of connect with. It could be a spouse, it could be anyone. But it's important that you share that.
No, that's a really interesting point. Have you ever had a mentor?
Yeah, good question. I don't have one mentor. I have a lot of people ask for their advice. And if you were to look for mentors, you'd be lucky if you can find one mentor that's with you for the whole career. I've never had that. I just had people I've met along the way that are very friendly and very kind of forgiving in terms of things we throw at them, and they'll listen and they'll give honest feedback. My advice is, you can ask a little from a lot of people. It's one way to kind of, connect with and find mentors. Successful people typically don't have a lot of time. And so the one way you can, extract knowledge and support from them is say, hey, look, I just got a couple of questions. Can I just ask you quickly? You get a much better response that way than the other way around.
Sure. You've alluded to communication and the importance of communication here. I've heard you're a bit of a linguist. You're a multilingual individual. You were interested in languages at a young age. Can you tell us why you were interested in linguistics and why you learned these languages and what you've gained from that.
Gosh, how do you find that, Gareth? That's a great question. Yeah, so my history is my grandparents grew up in China, immigrated to Vietnam, where my parents grew up, and I was born there until I was 2 years old, and that was sort of during the war, sort of Vietnam War, and obviously we fled with the Americans because we were fighting with the Americans, so we came to the U.S. And I obviously grew up in Houston for most of my sort of early schooling years, so 18, sort of from 2 to 18, before I went to university, sort of Boston University.
Right.
And so through that, I've obviously have a cultural melting pot of like, so we're ethnically Chinese. Parents grew up in Vietnam, so they have that Vietnamese mixture. I grew up in obviously Houston, Texan, and I had a lot of Mexican friends as well. And so that sort of major
That's some
melting pot.
fusion of cultures there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible. I was very fortunate. I went to a high school that supported languages quite sort of actively, and so it was called Bel Air High School, and we had about 15, 20 different languages in a school, in a high school, and it's not even a university. And so that was like my playground. I loved it. So I studied Spanish and German on top of the fact that I could speak Vietnamese and Chinese and English. So that was fun for me, and the people I met, the friends I made were a reflection of that. So I had friends from all sorts of backgrounds, and that really
Yeah.
solidified my views that you can connect with everyone. You just need to communicate, learn to communicate, understand the value of communication, and yeah, that's a sort of who I am.
So, which languages are you proficient with? Then you obviously mentioned Vietnamese, Chinese, English, and you're obviously probably on the way to becoming proficient with Spanish as well, or are you already there?
Well, no, to be totally honest, I haven't really used that much of these other languages since I stuff in my working kind of life. Obviously, English is my native language. Studied, mostly
Yeah.
Spanish growing up, but yeah, it comes out when I go traveling. So we were in Costa Rica recently, and that was a lot of fun.
You grew up in Houston. You decided to go to Boston to go to university then, yeah? You studied marketing and business. Talk us through that experience then and how that set you on the path that you ultimately went on in your career.
Because I was so much, so in love with languages, I thought about being like a translator or some sort of linguist. It's one thing to have a hobby versus a job, I think. And I can't imagine me doing that all day, every day. So that kind of stopped in terms of the idea. And then it occurred to me that, with marketing, you can still communicate in a very different way. And in marketing, it's all about storytelling and communicating with different people with different backgrounds.
Sure.
And that felt like a natural fit for me. That's really why I started, focusing on marketing. And it was a great decision, actually, because it was consistent, in terms of what I focused on. And I think in life and success, a lot of success is cumulative. So, focus on something, build on top of that, and that's where you see the real value. And so I stuck with it, and then I got jobs and everything just around that sort of function, that domain expertise, if you will.
So you worked for three juggernauts of the web world in the first part of your career. Then you obviously Amazon, Microsoft, and Yahoo, who were a big player around that time, and certainly are to a certain extent even now. But and you obviously went towards this product direction, yeah. So what sort of moved you towards that career path in terms of e-commerce and product?
Yeah, well, I've always loved technology. I can remember my dad bought me an IBM PS2, 1986, and it was before graphical interface, and it was expensive as well. It was like $2,000. It was a lot of money back then, and I would just fit around with the MS-DOS manual and kind of do some line coding. And so I've always loved technology, and so when I got that chance to interview for a job at Amazon in sort of 2000, I jumped at it. I just did whatever I could to get into that. And there's a whole story around how I got.
What was Amazon like at that time as an organization? Because that was kind of early on, wasn't it? How big were they, and what was the culture like there around that time?
The offices were based out in Slough, so it wasn't great. And so I think they were known for being very penny pinching. And so we didn't have a lot of perks. It was just like, you should be grateful you're working at Amazon. But I was very grateful, actually. They had some really, really smart people. And at that time, we were just selling, e-commerce, products. So but the highlights were when we launched a new product line. So I remember when we launched Amazon Music, it was like, wow, we have music now. I can buy music and look at all this. And then there was like for me, the highlight was with when they launched Amazon Electronics. And so I was sitting in the marketing department, and the electronics department was like right below us. And the electronics guy would get all these freebies from all these vendors. Hey, can you just test it out? And obviously they'll just get like they're the guys you want to make friends with at Amazon back then, because you get
Yeah,
all sorts of cool gadgets. And the guys would say, hey, and I'll say like, do I need to return this ad? And he's like, no, keep it. It's like, just have, write a review though. And then, you can have it. Great. Well, I'll help you out. I'll write as many reviews as you like, take the load off for you. Just, I'm here whenever you need me. So yeah, that was,
yeah, definitely.
that was back then.
That's like a dream job for a 20-something. That is, isn't it? Just fiddling around with all these amazing gadgets all the time. I can see myself doing that. Yeah. So you worked for these juggernauts then, and then obviously you ended up working for a benefits provider. How did you enter into that benefits platform world? You know what I mean? How did that come about?
So towards the end of 2010, I was at Microsoft MSN, and they were retrenching. So they had voluntary redundancy. I was actually quite risk adverse at the time. Yet I wanted desperately to do my own thing, but the time came. So it was a bit of a push into that space for me, because Microsoft was offering 6-month paid leave, paid sort of redundancy package. I mean, so I took it,
Sure.
and so that gave me a little bit of a runway. And with that time period, with that bit of extra cash, I with my co-founder started a company called HuddleBuy. And if you can remember, 2010 was when they had Groupon, Living Social, and all these sort of group buying sites. Our pitch was quite simple to our investors: like, we're going to create the B2B version of Groupon. That's it. Think Groupon, but selling to business owners. And so we had to pivot a few times to get to Perkbox, the same company, different name, different proposition. So we pivoted from selling benefits and discounts to business owners to selling benefits and discounts to the employees of those businesses. And that was the pivot that created Perkbox.
Can you talk us through, for the listeners who don't know much about Perkbox then, can you talk us through what the proposition was and what problem you were trying to solve, and who was your ideal target customer?
So when we started Perkbox at that time, 2014, 15 is when that brand was created. Perks at the workplace were really not common, mostly found in big companies like Amazon, Yahoo, like as you would expect, these big multinationals can afford benefits.
Yeah.
And so there's a gap in the market, especially in the SME side of things, and small to medium-sized businesses. And employees wanted it. It was a need that employees, saw, and so we catered to the employees as a brand, but sold to the employer as an employee benefit. And so there was actually two audiences who we were catering to. And obviously with my marketing background and lead generation that we perfected with HuddleBuy, to be fair, because Groupon as a model, what they were really good at was lead generation. As soon as you land on the site, you leave an email address or whatever, right? So they can retarget you. And so we applied those two types of learnings and those two types of specialties. And that became how we grew Perkbox so quickly. The need for perks and benefits, connect as a brand to both the employer and employee, and have a go-to-market strategy that it can scale quickly and efficiently. So the target audience were just businesses across the board. Perkbox has a very broad appeal. We wanted to go for the largest business possible, to be fair, but a lot of bigger ones already had some sort of benefit. So we were going for greenfields rather than trying to win businesses from existing suppliers. Fast forward to the present, it's a very different business. And the focus is global now at Perkbox. Post-COVID working life, people are remote, and remote teams, remote cultures, and how to manage that. That's the new face of Perkbox now, and I'm really proud to see where they've evolved over the years. I left Perkbox as a CMO in 2018 to start my current business called Mintago. But yeah, so that's how it's evolved over the years.
Obviously, you're a product guy by trade. From initial conception through to when you left, talk us through the product development journey and what challenges you had and how you overcame them, and what were the key milestones in that product development journey for you.
It's about understanding what pain you're really solving. Like the world is really simple. When you develop a product, it needs to solve for a pain or a need, and how clear you are in articulating it to your team and internalizing through reviews and interviews, with the prospects and the users, is really important, because that translation of understanding what the pain, what you're trying to solve with an outcome, with a product, is really what defines success. A lot of people think, okay, I got a great idea, I love it, and then you get into sort of this echo chamber of saying, "Oh, I love it, you love it too," and the whole team kind of falls in love with your idea, but you've just created a bubble where you think it's a great idea, and then once you enter the market, it falls flat simply
Yeah.
because of that connection to the outside world isn't there. And so that is a process that happens daily, back and forth, and you start creating a more sort of robust, representation of what the world needs and what you can build. That's really, for me, a very simple way of describing how you develop a product.
Yeah, sure. So, in terms of the growth journey then of Perkbox, you started off as a UK centric offering, working with mainly medium sized businesses, I think, in the UK. And then, but you fast forward to today, or even when you left, and there's a global footprint in Perkbox, work with companies all over the world. Talk us through that journey of going global. Was it challenging to deliver on your product in other jurisdictions?
Oh, it's incredibly hard. I think people love the idea of that huge market. We launched globally before COVID, so since I forget the year 2016. We started reaching out to like France and Australia and setting up offices there. There's lots of hiccups and sort of road bumps along the way. It boils down to like you're creating a new company in every country. Essentially, you have to go from top to bottom. The needs are different, how you present it is different, the marketing, the go-to-market strategy, servicing even. There are lots of different nuances that you have, but there are specialists out there that done it multiple times. I don't profess to be an expert in sort of global rollouts at all. I've been sort of, my role was quite more functional when I was at Perkbox. It was more of a CMO, sort of marketing lead, but even so, it's all about adapting to the local culture, and that's top to bottom. It's the product, the messaging, the sales, and post sales.
Looking back now on the Perkbox journey, what was the biggest setback? Was there any moments maybe early on where you thought, "Wow, we can't overcome this one. It's gone." Things. What was the biggest setback that you had, and how did you overcome it?
With loads, countless. I mean, for me, it's no one big setback. I think for us, transitioning from how to buy to Perkbox, because it's like many things in life. The early years, the formative years are typically the hardest. We were in this what we call storming, forming stage, right? We're not really sure who we are. We're like, we thought we were like a Groupon for business, and we had to say no, that's not who we are. We had to tell our team that look, this company is no longer what you think it is, what you signed up for. It's a new company selling a new product. These things are
Sure.
hard in terms of communicating the change and that change management. And we had loads of ideas and loads of pivots. And so, so there's like three pivots. For example, Groupon was like a basic. So the Hudbot was a basic, a Groupon model. And then we transitioned to like a premium model where we charge users for a subscription to access, the limited deals. That didn't work. And then we started doing a few other things. So it was really hard. And also, we didn't raise any capital. So we had to be very capital efficient because we didn't know what we were trying to do to actually raise capital. And that's just a chicken and egg,
Yeah.
right? So as we found sort of product market fit in 2014, there are other sets of problems that we had. So now that we had money, as we're growing, the next question became, what do we build? What do we add to this? Is it just more than perks? In hindsight, we built too many different products. If you look at the history of Perkbox, we had other products, that were in the market that we had to kind of retrench and then kind of pull back because we were too aggressive. We thought we were going to go one way, but we really actually didn't. Obviously, that cost time and money, but that's part of growing pains.
But you have to do that though, surely,
Yeah.
Chieu. You have to build loads of products because you have to have a bit of a trial and error mentality, don't you? Because otherwise you'll never find that one that works, surely.
True, true. But the ways, but there's a spectrum in terms of what you can try versus having a culture of trying too many things and lacking the discipline. I think there's the balance of trying new things, but is it within what we think is the right framework? I think that's important. But I think we were lacking a bit of that because we were too aggressive growing. We were very sort of growth led, marketing led, I think sales led. But look, we
Yeah.
came out of that, stronger, better, and I think now it's incredible. It's a great business, and I'm so proud to see what's become and where it's come from.
So you obviously set up Mintago in 2019. I'm just keen to know what lessons you learned from Perkbox that have helped you in terms of getting Mintago off the ground.
What I've learned is that they're both equally difficult. You'd like to think that there's transferable leadership skills. What I've learned, how to stay resilient, how to communicate changes, and how to ensure that people are resourceful in finding solutions, um, and answers to problems. But in terms of the technicalities, it's a very different business altogether. Yes, we sold to similar kind of buyers in the market, but at Perkbox, we were selling to just primarily HR directors, and so it's an HR function, doesn't touch the rest of the business. Whereas with Mintago, we actually sold to HR and finance directors, and because there's a payroll component, there's a financial component, it has a higher sort of connection across the organization. So we have to kind of think about different problems, and that was hard. It was different from what I expected. Then what I realized is, like, it's always going to be different. Like, no two companies are going to the same. Like, it's whether it's a different product, it could be different people that you're dealing with just to solve those problems as well. So there's a people component to it. And so, over the years, since I started sort of Mintago in 2019, yeah, it's taken a lot of new learnings, to get it to where it is now. It's not a carbon copy of what I've learned. I think as a second time founder, you're in a better headspace because you've seen a lot of problems and you can anticipate the their highs and lows. But it's almost like your ship, in sort of open seas. You want to navigate where you try to stay as calm as possible. You have like the peaks and troughs, and you just don't want to be riding on those ends all the time. It's just it's too much. So I try to guide
Yeah.
my team thinking like, okay, just find the path where it's not too choppy. It's like, meaning, we're gonna be, when people are upset, it's like it's okay. You're gonna be all right, or it's super excited about something, celebrate, but like there's work to be done. So this is have an
Sure.
even keel, as it progresses, and that's one of the things I've learned as a second time entrepreneur, to kind of have that balance.
Yeah, sure. The maritime analogy works so well for business, doesn't it? Because it just explains the journey so well. Yeah, and I love that. And that was a great answer. So talk us through, in terms of Mintago, what is the purpose of the business? What problem are you trying to solve?
With Mintago, it's all around financial well-being. What we found when I started the business is that, financial well-being is a broad term. It's a big problem to solve. A lot of people don't know how to approach it, but what the market has, as we would describe it, are mostly point solutions. And that's fine, because as the industry historically, the companies that have been in the space offered great solutions, whether it's different types of like loans, or access to money or education, which is fine, and or coaching. There's all kinds of things that are out in the market. And historically, the buyer, the HR directors or finance people, would have to choose, okay, what do I want for my staff, and is that the right thing? Well, maybe it is, because that's what I think they need. And fast forward to today, it's more or less still like that situation. No one else has really come to the scene except for us. So with Mintago, I like to say we're the most employee-centric or user-centric financial well-being business out there. The reason why I say that is that we start with the end user. Obviously, it's the model is similar to Perkbox in the sense that we charge the employer a fee, but we start with the user and we look at what the user wants, and understand that every user is different, and their financial goals are different, and the products they use are different. So how can you go for point
Yeah.
solution? Technically speaking, you can't, because not everyone will be happy with one solution or two. And the problem is, and that's one side, and the employer doesn't want to buy 5 solutions and have to deal with 5 different platforms. That system will evolve, and I think we're at the forefront of that evolution right now. So we're sensing a massive kind of shift in terms of, let's solve for financial well-being properly. So the way we do this is that we have a great platform that anchors people around pension as a starting point. Why? Because pension is one of the largest
Yeah.
assets that people own, and it's very poorly optimized. They lose pensions, about 26 billion pounds of lost pensions in the UK. That's a starting point. The great thing about what we do is that we're unbiased. So every time we find a pension, it's yours. You can choose what you want to do with it. You're not forced to consolidate. So like I said, back to my point about business model. There are pension tracing services out there, and but they make their money through consolidation fees and all that stuff, right? So we don't, which is great. So I think we were trying to make sure that we are giving employees that choice, to do what they want to do, and employers recognize that. They love the fact that we're going through the whole checklist of things that employees need from a financial point of view, and helping them out, starting with pension. Fast forward into the future, we're going to create a Mintago health score, which is basically the North Star or the guiding light for every user. We believe that in the future, by optimizing these various buckets, whether it's debt, pensions, income, finances, a whole range of things that comprises financial health or can be scored, measured, and optimized.
Do you think we should be teaching financial education in schools? Do you think that that's something that young people should be? Because, when I was growing up, I had no idea about how a pension works, and I had no idea about anything to do with finance because I was never taught that. You know what I mean? My parents are from, my dad's a coal mining electrician, and my mother works for the NHS. You know what I mean? We just had no financial literacy in our family, and I think there's lots of people like that, like me as well. I mean, do you have an opinion on that at all?
Absolutely. I think it needs to start with the government, to be totally honest, and it needs to be part of what we do as a government. I think government needs to fund more programs to really working with schools to have that as a proper curriculum. I have a 12 and 14-year-old. I'm trying to teach them, but and they're lucky because they have parents that care and will push them, but they don't get that education at school today. Right now it's not some distant past that this was a problem. So that needs to be resolved. Sort of systematically. The types of education, it's sad because people don't even read. They can't even read their pay slips, like basic things like that. They don't know what that means.
Yeah.
So for me, the view is yes, teach them in schools, but if obviously you missed that boat and you're in into the workforce, I think financial education needs to be taught in context. So what I mean by that is people are not going to just watch. Yes, they're going to watch, or read long text or whatever that's out there, but give it to them in sort of here's what you need to do and here's how you can do it in context. I'm using education plus action and make it as close as possible. So, for example, debt management. Okay, here's why debt is good. Good debt, bad debt. Oh, here's some links to deal with your cards, your mortgages, whatever. So connecting the two is really important because what people do is that people hate. What I've learned, people hate reading about, finance in general. Just it's boring for a lot of people.
Yeah,
but
sure.
they like to see outcomes. They like for what we found. They like to find assets or hit milestones or achieving goals. That sort of the psychology of money is so powerful, and I think that's a very interesting area to really talk about and dive deep in. For any business, if you really want to solve financial well-being, understand the psychology, the psychological drivers of that, and so that education is a big part of that. Teach them, but also show them how to do it and reward them for doing it. I think that's really the formula that needs to happen for people to really get out of this. So yes, we talk about financial literacy on its own won't work. You need to have these other components that really drive the result. That's what we want. We want results.
That's it's a really good answer, and you raised some really good points there. But I'm keen to understand what are you most excited about in the fintech world at the moment?
I'm excited with anything that solves big problems. Problems in society for me is rewarding. Like I started Mintago simply because I love sticking my teeth into something that means a lot to me, but also to the people we help. So with regards to fintech, there's the amount of data that we can collect and use, in the proper ways is quite exciting because by having data, you can do some amazing things. So for me, it's all about helping people achieve goals, in the fintech world,
Yeah.
So it's all, you need to boil complex systems into really basic, ideas. And for me, fintech is all about helping people achieve goals, whether it's, trying to buy something, improving the credit score, mortgages, and how do you get there? And to combine psychology, like I said before, human psychology, how they think about money, behave, absorb, information with data and technology and user interfaces that actually connects and understands and understands how people like to absorb that information is where the magic happens. And so that's really where the edge of technology is going to take us. And we're talking about could it be AI? Interfaces and make clever ways of having a buddy, financial buddy, AI buddy says, look, Chieu, you've done it again. You didn't,
Yeah.
you spent too much this weekend. What, you need to offset that with something else. And that's understanding people and behaviors using technology. And the
Sure.
the fintech world is no different. It's connecting, and our biology is our limitation. That's the other way to think about it. The human biology hasn't evolved fast enough with the technology that we surrounded ourselves with. We're still living with the same DNA that we've had 200,000 years ago as cavemen. From my current view of technology and how that interfaces with, we need to think of ourselves as the limitations of human psychology and biology with what we're trying to achieve with technology, and connecting the two would be quite exciting for me.
Yeah. I mean, technology innovation doesn't really consider that, does it? I think innovation is just going on and on and on and on. And I think we need to be mindful of what we're capable of comprehending, I suppose,
Absolutely.
and that's a brilliant segue, actually, Chieu, into Chat GPT. And I know you've been as excited as I have about this, and also as mindful and maybe scared as I am about this. Is it a game changer?
Absolutely. It's a mixture of fear, anxiety, and excitement all mixed into one. It's like, how can this feel so real? My
Yeah,
background as a marketer, obviously, I've written a lot of copy, had copywriters, spent hours and years of the career, writing great copy. It's like, yeah, right. This has totally changed that industry. I mean, I've heard of
I
marketers say, hey,
know.
look, we
Yeah.
save charging clients thousands of pounds to write copy, and this is better than what I've written over the
Yeah.
years.
100%. But isn't it amazing that people don't realize the power of it? Because as you know, Chew, you've probably done. If you give it one query, it's probably not going to nail it first time. But if you coerce it a little bit, you know what I mean. If you say, I want to make it more succinct, I want to make it funnier. The version you get on the fifth iteration is just unbelievably good, isn't it? But you've got to put a bit of effort into it. You've got to get good at asking questions, haven't you?
Here's my take on Chat GPT. Okay, so there are two sides to
Yeah.
this. Right now, there's a bit that is actually unoptimized, and that's having a bit of software that trains you or teaches you how to input properly, so Chat GPT can actually translate that to a good outcome. Because that's the human barrier side thing. Still, like, we're still humans, not really sure how to interface with this technology. So there's a big solution there. And on the other side, ChatGPT is basically, based on my understanding, has just been fed Wikipedia data, just kind of historical, literature. That's nothing compared to what the future holds. Imagine if you open that data set to, real life, like medical information, driving history, just data across legal, data. They can tell you how to do a whole lot of things. Like medical is a huge one. Diagnosing symptoms based on all these other things, or live information, guiding you through things. And it's for me, it's a bit mind blowing, because what's the limitation to the current Chat GPT? It's the data that's fed into it and how it analyzes it. It has a huge set of data, but that's just static, I think, data from Wikipedia. When you start feeding in all these
Yeah.
other data sources that you can possibly have, that's when it gets really crazy.
Yeah.
And I guess what Elon was saying is that if the milestone is when it becomes two-way. So imagine if it gets fed in data, aviation data, whatever, and starts controlling things, pushing out, signals, and that's when the whole kind of, it is going to take over the world type of scenario becomes really real when
Skynet.
exactly, when it starts, say, computing and
Yeah.
start connecting and sending out instructions, because it's linking that data to the outside world. So yeah, I think that's what I think a lot of experts are afraid of, is like, where do you have these kind of barriers of where it can interact and what systems it can actually, rather than spitting out text, it can send out so many other signals.
It's going to become an expert at everything, and is going to have that knowledge available in a digestible way at the flick of a button within 3 seconds. That's compute, that power is going to be far beyond any human could ever process or deliver. So yeah, that's the scary stroke,
Scary.
which I don't think we're far away from. We're
No.
not far away from that, are we?
But I like to look at the positive side of life as well, Gareth. I mean, here's a use case that I'd love to kind of see, right? Imagine if you had that sort of AI technology, and if you're brave enough, you open up all your Google Photos, your Facebook, Twitter, all your social media, everything that you've done with the outside world, and digested that, and understands your passion, what you want to do, and it becomes your buddy. So, like, I already know you, where you eat, what
Yeah,
you like to eat, the foods you, and these are things that would
yeah,
entertain you, and it will just scour the web, find things for you with that. Like, that's like the most tailored,
sure.
buddy that you can have. Now, you can say that's scary because it knows too much about you, but on the flip side, it could be almost like a companion, because this thing knows you
Yeah,
so
yeah.
well. I don't know. It's for me. I would love to experiment, but also have the controls. But if something like, I look at, obviously, my background as a marketer, I look at ads and understand what people are trying to sell or say. But if you have someone that's that intelligent, knowing what to say exactly, that kind of presses all the buttons for you and gets you excited, or steers you away from things that you're bad at. And it's a very powerful thing to have around. And like that's the true kind of
Yeah.
buddy in that sense, that connects, the digital world
Yeah.
with your world.
Well, it's like having the best PA in the world, isn't it? Who's
That's
like
true.
far more knowledgeable, intelligent than you will ever be. They're available 24 hours and you pay a small subscription for them a month.
I'd do it just to test it out.
And everyone will be
curious.
walking around with these PAs.
Exactly.
Just wanted to ask you a bit more about tech innovation then. So you are obviously a marketeer, you're an online, you're a product guy, online guy. How has consumer behavior changed in the last couple of years? And what are you seeing in terms of web trends right now? And I just want to tie that into Web3 as well, and the development of Web3. How do you view that playing out in terms of your sort of, in your world?
Well, I guess there's a proliferation of a lot of things, right? So, in my world, fintech, there's a proliferation of assets. You can buy,
Yeah.
micro shares or, NFTs. You can own so many different things. Technology has allowed you to do that. And obviously with crypto, there's tons that you can do on the payment scene. So I think it's just growing in terms of magnitudes, in terms of the complexity, the variety of what you can own in terms of assets, what you can consume in terms of media, and making it really easy to produce content and media and reach the world. So it's a two-way thing. You can absorb a lot more, but you can also push out a lot more, a lot easier. Like the whole,
Yeah.
for me, like TikTok is monumental. It's solved for so many things in terms of like you don't have to be a content producer, but also it's created a situation where it's the UI, the UX makes it so easy to kind of do that. It's second nature to create content on TikTok and those
Yeah.
types of platforms. And so technology is making things that are very much what we've been doing in the past, but amplified it tenfold to hundredfolds. So that's really what I'm seeing the technology. But then again, on top of that, there's technology that goes the other way. Basically, it simplifies a complex world. And back to my point again, you can only read so
Yeah,
fast. You
sure.
can only absorb what is out there, and limitations to the human body is really that what's holding us back. And that's another topic, extending human senses. But
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. This excites me because I think we are basically seeing time as more and more of a commodity as we develop technology. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So time is the asset now. Time is the asset. Well, time and attention is the asset. That's in your world, isn't it? Attention is the asset. Just to get people's attention now, is just so difficult. Your content has to be amazing in order to just get any attention. So it's just becoming so challenging. But it is raising the bar, though, isn't it? But yeah, it's just it's an exciting time in many respects. So what other tech innovation are you excited about, Chieu?
Well, I think for me, the energy revolution, this whole concept of free energy, and I love that concept. Like, imagine if you did have free energy. I read lots of stories of how energy, is capped. Tesla had some patents that were created that you can get energy from like thin air by just, I don't know what he does. There are patents that were like bought by the government, kind of shelved, right? And so, we can create access to energy, more efficient use of energy, transportation of energy. It just changes society, and the wars are fought on energy, right? So for me, like the biggest thing that we can help improve society is to kind of crack that problem. Obviously, from a tech point of view, batteries, and the fact that batteries is so much more efficient. Now you have electric bikes and all these things that drones, even planes now, because it's lighter. The ratio of energy density, by weight, by changing how energy is produced and transported and sort of and housed, would change society massively. And I'm not an expert in that space. As a consumer, I drive an electric car, and I love the fact that it changes my life. But I can imagine that we're just at the tip of the iceberg, because with that, it changes how cost of living crisis, energy crisis. It's all interrelated.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, look, we've covered some really good ground here, Chieu. But there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you before we wrap up. So you're a busy man. So how do you stay productive and how do you stay organized? What tools do you use? What sort of mantras do you live by? What advice would you give to somebody in terms of staying productive and organized?
For me, it's understanding my mental state every day, having time to sleep well. You're limited by how well you can consume knowledge and process, and that's your brain. And the brain's connected to your body. So understand that
Sure.
on a daily basis, sleep well, eat well, exercise. As any entrepreneur, for me, that is crucial. So you can't replace that. Get that right, and then start the day with a goal in mind. Meaning, like, what do you want to accomplish that day? What are the most important things? Try to get that done in the morning. These are the things that you probably hear already. I try to should be very disciplined about that and trying to get all the thinking, the creative stuff in the morning, and it obviously slows down in the afternoon. So you want to kind of know yourself. Managing stress is really important. That's the key thing. It's like it's a mind game as well. So if you're not good at managing stress, it affects how you communicate, affects how you plan, affects everything. So those are the components that for me affects productivity. One tool I use, and it's important that everyone does, is to have outlets for creativity and thinking. So I use Flipboard, which is like a nice little app on your phone. It consolidates all these news and articles, and sometimes I throw in random topics, and I just read, read them, and that gives me mental stimulation and exercise. It could be an offbeat topic about the coral reef or whatever, the random things, but it's cool because it makes your mind think outside of the box, and then you come back to this. It's like, okay, yeah, there's one book I've read recently. It's called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant.
Oh, I know Naval. I follow him on Twitter. He's
Naval,
like a modern day stoic philosopher, isn't he?
I
Naval,
love
yeah,
Naval.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Naval Ravikant.
I haven't read that though. I haven't read that one.
He actually publishes it free on his website, so it's an audiobook. So I like to
Cool.
listen while I go to the gym. So I listen to his audiobook. He's just amazing. I mean, he's been through a lot. Kind of I share a lot of his sort of journey
Yeah.
in terms of, like, immigrant growing up, made some big breaks. He's humble but aggressive. In terms of, like, trying to do as much as he can. All around good person. I really like him. So, but he's just had
Yeah.
nuggets and loads of advice. And one thing that he did say that really kind of stuck with me was that he said, look, a lot of people go through life thinking it's a multiplayer game, meaning you have to compete to be the best guy in that sort of game and level up and win. But what he's saying is, like, well, what they don't realize, it's actually a solo game. You're born alone. Yes, you have this kind of interaction, and then you die alone, and you can't take everything with you. And so if you spend all your life trying to please others and compete with others, you're still going to end up in the same place. We all do.
Yeah, sure.
And so take that into perspective. And when I kind of digested that a bit more, kind of absorbed that kind of thinking, it makes for a much easier kind of life for me in terms of, seeing what's around me and say, like, am I judging myself based on others, or am I judging based on the path I want to take? That's when I
Yeah.
realizing and how making the better decisions for myself.
There's loads of great advice there. By the way, I was going to mention as well, maybe you can check this out. Do you know Notion, which is like Evernote? It's a note-taking app.
Yeah.
They've got, apparently there's Notion AI is coming out, which has kind of got like Chat GPT implemented into it. So it's probably the closest thing to a virtual personal assistant that you could get at the moment. So yeah, maybe check that out, Notion AI. But all the stuff you just mentioned, especially the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, I'm going to check that out, and we'll put all that on the show notes as well, so the guys can take a look at that. But I wanted to finish on this question, though. Looking back at your career now, and I know you're not done yet, but supposing you are in your armchair with your cigar, looking back, what would you say to your 21-year-old self?
I'd say enjoy the present, enjoy what it is at the time, but don't forget that you need to build stepping stones, to a future that makes you happier. So there are two lives that you live. You live the present life, and there's a future life as well you have to look after. And some people forget that, and they have, and it's bad as well, because if you're always worrying about the future and trying to plan ahead and do things that may or may not happen, you miss out on enjoying your present life. And so for me, it was that sort of conundrum where I was worried about what I can achieve, and sometimes I forget to enjoy what was present in front of me when I was 21. Now there's a better balance between enjoy life for what it is, and don't miss out on what is important versus what is urgent. What's urgent you have to kind of do because someone's telling you to do it, versus important, meaning family, time to enjoy things and kind of build those relationships, because that's what gives you meaning over time.
Absolutely. It's so difficult, isn't it, to stay in the moment sometimes. When you're stressed about something, your mind just takes you to that place and you miss what's going on in front of you. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? I struggle with that. It's difficult. It's a difficult one. Chieu, it's been a joy. I think we've got some amazing content there. So thank you so much for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast. It's been a privilege to talk to you.
Thanks, Gareth. It's a real pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
So what really stood out for me was the sheer number of challenges that clearly Chieu and his team faced whilst growing Perkbox. It really felt like I was talking to somebody who had the battle scars. It's kind of difficult to explain, but the authenticity really came across. It was like almost like he didn't know which challenges to bring up because there were so many of them. But in terms of the ones we did cover, there was particular emphasis on global growth. It was good to hear him describe how they had a lot of trouble in the early days pertaining to the different cultures, to the different values, to the different marketplaces that they were operating in, and how it was like setting up a brand new company every single time. So yeah, it was fascinating to hear the breakdown of that. Aside from that, the other thing that was stood out for me was Chiu's opinion on financial education in schools. And especially in relation to his latest venture, Mintago, which is a big on financial education and basically is a platform which consolidates finances in a manageable, efficient way. He sort of begged the question whether we should be teaching young people as part of the school curriculum more about financial education. Should we be pushing students to understand their pay slip, understand their investment options, what a pension is, all this jargon, reading a basic balance sheet, so that they've got some financial literacy coming out of the education system? Surely that's a good idea. I understand things are starting to change in that respect, but I thought it was a fascinating conversation and a fascinating topic to bring up. And the other one was, we've had quite a few guests explain the journey of an entrepreneur in this way, using an analogy of navigating a boat in a storm, like through the icebergs in the storm. When you turn the wheel, the boat takes a while to actually respond to that turn. And, it's quite representative of the decisions that you make at the helm of a business. And I thought that was a really great way to explain some of the challenges, certainly that Chieu encountered in this sort of journey of growing Perkbox. Look, there was so much to choose from. There was lots of value. I hope you enjoyed it. I love chatting to Chieu. It was a really, really great conversation. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for downloading. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for downloading this episode. We really love doing this show and are absolutely humbled by all of the incredible people who download and listen, plus the incredible guests who take the time to come on and share their secrets and experiences with our listeners. Please can I ask that you take a couple of seconds to subscribe or follow the show. This small action means a lot to us and helps us greatly. Thank you. As you quite possibly have heard me mentioning in the past, we record the mass majority of our episodes at an amazing studio facility here in Cardiff at Tramshed Tech. Tramshed Tech is a collaborative community of entrepreneurs and scaling businesses geared towards supporting growth in tech, digital and creative industries across an ever-increasing collection of locations and partner locations, UK-wide and internationally. It really is the perfect place for your business to start up, scale up, accelerate, or innovate. Head over to tramshedtech.co.uk or just search Tramshed Tech on your favorite social media platform.